and welcome back to the Colour Cave, where we like to play with art stuff. We are revisiting the June Upcrate today, and it is to tackle the Upcrate battle, which is worldwide map. So we had this lovely collection of inspiration for doing some map work or some buildings and some architecture. I am actually super excited about this. Quite simplistic in terms of supplies. I, however, on the other hand, have got completely carried away in the planning stages of this, and I find this quite interesting because about 2 days after this box arrived and I did the unboxing, there was a knock at my door and there was this stranger standing on the doorstep, a gentleman, and he had in his hand photographs, aerial photographs of all the farms in the surrounding area from 1980, and he's selling these photographs because he's got the rights to them. So we actually have a photograph of the farm that I live on from the 80s, and it's very interesting to see the layout in it, and it is completely different now. So I feel like this video was kind of meant to be. So my idea, and I had this idea at the unboxing, and I just find it strange that this gentleman turned up at the house, was to design a fantasy farm kind of loosely based on the things that we have on farms, that we need on farms, but also things that I think would be quite cool. So I went into my sketchbook for a little while, but I wanted to take some inspiration. While I find the featured artist's artwork is very intriguing, it's very regimented and it's very repetitive, and that's something as an artist I don't like doing, which is why I don't like drawing architecture. So I decided to draw some inspiration from elsewhere. I've always been an avid reader ever since I was very, very small, and one of the things I used to love was when you got a storybook that had a map in it. See, when you got a book with a map, I was so happy. And I picked out a few that really stuck out in my mind just for some inspiration, and one of the ones I always enjoyed, there was very old-fashioned books. Now, these books were old-fashioned when I was a child, and it was the Millie Molly Mandy series, very twee stories, but there's an excellent map at the front of the book, and I loved that map so much. And I've also picked out one of Enid Blyton's maps, and obviously Winnie the Pooh. So that was there to give me some inspiration. I also came across a short blog article as well about maps in children's books, which was really nice. So if you're looking for some inspiration on that sort of vein, I'll leave that link down in the description for you, and you can go and read the article, because I found it really inspiring, and I wanted to pick up more of this sort of childish aesthetic rather than this very sort of solid, regimented and slightly clinical feel. So that's where my inspiration came from. So in my sketchbook here, in my lovely big yellow sketchbook, first of all I sketched out some ideas of things that I wanted to include in the map, so elements that I wanted to be, and then I went on to do a very rough sketch of how I wanted it laid out. So this is really big and really complicated. No idea how we're going to get it onto an A5 sheet of paper, but that's kind of the point. So I'm just going to grab the little pad that we've been given, this A5 pad, and I am going to get going. We would probably be going landscape, but for the purposes of this we are going to go portrait, and I'm going to try and scale everything down and squeeze everything in, and just basically just see how we get on. This might not go well at all. I have a funny feeling I really need to do this on an A3 sheet of paper. So job number one, try and squeeze everything in. So I think the easiest way to do this is to actually block this off into the different sections of this mythical farm. So first of all, at the top here I put some sunshine in, because that's something that's always nice. So this kind of focuses on a sort of almost like a roundabout that's got a big tree in it, so we'll stick that in there. So I've got the basic farm track layout here. I know it's very, very faint, but this pencil is in fact a 2H, so that was going to be the case. So the plan now is just to map out where all the elements that I wanted in the picture to go. But our centerpiece tree here, this is almost it's almost like a roundabout. And this tree is called Big Bertha, and she is based on Olga, which is our big tree that we've got in our garden. One of the things that's quite important in when you're actually planning a layout, you know, if you're building a new farm, especially if you've got fields or grazing land, one of the really important things is gate placement. you have to give yourself a path of transit, particularly for tractors if you are working the land for crops, or if you have to move cows about. You want the path of least resistance, and everything has to be secure, because if it's not, that's when stuff goes wrong. So my fences are basically, if you look at a normal map, my fences are going to look like a rail track. They're just going to be a line with posts, just to denote the fact that it is in fact a fence. There's going to be a lot of trees, there's going to be a lot of shrubbery. I kind of wish I could employ a green pencil just to, you know, to do some of the greenery. I have a funny feeling though that I might end up redoing this on a much grander scale and making it more detailed. Okay, so we've got a bull paddock in here. You'd like to have a nice secure area to keep your bulls separate. And if you're anything like us, your bulls get on together, so you can put a group of them in, but it needs to be secure, and somewhere that's really thick with vegetation and trees with a fence around it is your best bet, because you're blocking out any distractions like lady cows that are maybe in the field across the road. Obviously I'm designing this out of my own brain, so I'm going to make things convenient everywhere, you know. If we could actually do this in real life, this is the way we would want it. I haven't shown Mr. Jem this. I would think he would probably entirely disagree with all my decisions here, but it's my map, it's not his map, so heh. And I'm going to put in, we've got a body of water here, which is always an inconvenience and a blessing on a farm. And something that's also very common in farms as well is a tyre pile. Number one, you go through quite a lot of tyres with tractors, but also if you have any kind of pit that you need to seal off, it's usually silage, you have to make it airtight, and we use old tractor tyres because they're heavy to pin down the sheeting that actually makes it airtight. And the other thing that there's usually a pile of, apart from poo, is is a scrap pile. There's usually, you know, sheets of metal and fence wires, the other thing. Now, the other thing that usually features quite heavily in modern farmyards is the remnants of the old byres and the old buildings, which tend to be long and low. A lot of them, especially here in Scotland, would have had cattle in them, and they would be housed in much smaller quantities and much smaller groups than the more sort of industrial state of things now, and there probably would have been pig pens and, you know, all that kind of thing. And a lot of them are L-shaped, they're all joined together. I have observed many old sheds. Now, for us, interestingly, these old sheds, they just seem to fill up with junk really quickly. That's it's just kind of the way of it. And there's going to be another little rickety bridge across here. Maybe not the safest to be using. However, this is where the sensible place would be to put your midden. Your opposite side from the buildings, as far away as possible, because it stanks. I feel like I have to put this big pine tree, and this was the tree that actually blew down in a storm just before Christmas at our own place. So I feel like I have to include that. Now, this is an unusual one, and unless you're Scottish, you probably won't know, or a keen hill walker, what a bothy is. A bothy is basically like a cabin in, like, up a hill or in the woods, and a bothy is just an empty shell, and it's basically shelter for ramblers and hill walkers, that kind of thing. On the farm, we found out this used to be, there used to be a lot of shooting here. It used to be a game farm, and the bothy was the shed that the hunters and shooters used to go into at lunchtime, had a wood burning stove in it, so they could get dried off if they were wet, and they would sit and they could have a hot meal, you know, you could heat it up. Probably have a nip of whiskey or two as well, I would imagine. So that shed is still there. The wood burning stove is still there, and we use that as our as our garden shed because it's quite close to the house. So we keep our lawnmower in it, and, you know, like gardening tools and stuff. There is actually still a shelf in that shed that has glasses and cups and saucers, and there's half a bottle of gin. And I have no idea how old that gin is, but it's just like a relic, and I just let it sit there. So I'm just putting in here, I've got a little birdhouse here. We have cleared a space for the swallows that come every year. They were trying to nest in the eaves of our sunroom, just the way the front of the building's constructed. And they left a disastrous mess. And what started out as one or two families, the next year became 12, and say we had like a whole housing complex of them at one point, so we've netted that off, but we've actually left a shed open for them, so that they've got lots of shelter, and if you go in there it's basically just a big birdhouse now. Another really good thing to have is a field that can be seen from the house, and that is what we call a nursery field. And it's where you put new mummies if they're calving outside, or if you've got any sick animals, you know, maybe lame animals or ones that haven't been well, you have a paddock to put them in where they can be kept an eye on from the house. And it's convenience as well as a farmer. If you have to continually check on that animal every couple of hours, you want it to be as close to the steading as possible, just so that you're not spending half your time traipsing around looking for it. Okay, so another small building, a medicine room or a medicine block where you can keep all your drugs, because by law you have to have some kept in a fridge and you have to keep track of everything. So while there's a lot of greenery on this farm, this is very typical of a Scottish farm though. So this would be like the main yard with cows everywhere, and we'll have ourselves a little grain silo. I think pretty old fashioned now, but truthfully don't know where to start here, so I'm just going to start in this top corner. I feel like that's as good a place as any. Okay, so I think I was trying to figure out what colours I'm going to use where, and I think I'm going to use, hi Pee-Pee, I think I'm going to use the dark grey to outline the roads, but it's very, very fine and I don't want to use the brush per se. So I think this is what I'm going to do though. I may regret this, but that's alright. Yeah, okay, so just based on this, I think my first job is I'm going to use this 005 grey, and I'm going to go around and do all my trees and my shrubs. To the main road. Okay, back to that grey, and I think I'll take a really pale grey for this. We'll get some sunshine in there. I feel absolutely no inclination to use a ruler at this point, which I kind of thought was going to be happening if I'm truthful, just because I tend to steer clear of rulers altogether. This is going to be a really painful and slow process. Okay, so main features that I'm going to do in the 03 fine liner, just so that they stand out, rather than the 003. Spooky cave. Don't go in there on a dark night by yourself. You'll freak yourself out. Okay, so up here I've got the, this is like the part where the waterfall comes from, so it's just basically some good old Scottish hills here. So I think I'm just going to put them in grey. It actually just looks like the graphite. This could get confusing. I'll be trying to rub it out and it won't be rubbing out, and I'll be like, why is this not rubbing out? Again, bridges I think maybe dark grey, not a main feature. So okay, for the tyre stack, I'm going to struggle with the 03. Excuse me, the 03. So I'm going to use the 003, the little teeny tiny one. Well, that was a wonky tide if ever I saw one. Now, if I'm going to get my cow in here, we're going to have to use the little wee fine liner. There we go. Yeah. Poking her head through. Do you know, I've never drawn a bale in ink before. I don't think I've ever drawn one in pencil either, if I'm truthful. And again, you get different types and shapes and sizes of bales. We here where I live go for big round bales, so they're not actually round, they're cylindrical, but for the sake of simplicity it's easier to say round. There we go. So we've got some bales sitting outside, and yeah, there's going to be bales in this shed here as well, so we'll just we'll make that sort of suggestion that they're there rather than, you know, make things really awkward for ourselves, which I have been known to do, as I'm sure some of you are perfectly aware. Whoever stacked those bales once sacked, goodness me. Okay, right, there we go. Okay, I'm going to stop there, and I just want to erase my pencil lines from this top part of the drawing. I feel as if, you know, just to give myself that feeling that I'm actually making some progress, because this has taken a really long time. I knew this wasn't going to be a straightforward exercise, but I'm actually really enjoying this process. I think because I'm a person that likes to plan things as well, I'm quite an organised person, I think that's why I'm getting a little bit too much enjoyment out of this. When you are going to erase your pencil lines, I would wait a little while just to give your Pigma microns time to dry, because if you catch them too early, they can smudge. This bit here might not be quite Ready? I'll go easy. Okay, onward to the next part of the map. I don't have much in the way of roads to put in this section. Get my tractor shed in. Drawing that tractor. Oh, so easily amused. And I better put my fence in here as well. Here's my 003 to put my gate in here as well. I love 003s. Look how good that gate looks in 003. Oh, right, I need to go back to grey now as well. I am saving the light greys exclusively for just doing a bit of detail, you know, a bit of shading and stuff, but we'll get to that in a wee while. I've still got a fair bit to go here. Get some more bushes in here. Swallows rest. The bothy. I'm having so much fun right now. This is ridiculous. Get my trees in here. Yeah, that was the other thing I failed to mention as well when I was talking about the aerial photograph of our farm in ye olde days. All the old byres and buildings, they're really squint. They're not straight or level at all. And I felt as if I had to get that sort of ramshackle, you know, slightly flung together feel here. Right, okay, and we've got this one here. Oh, this is the implement shed, that's right. So here you keep your add-ons for your tractor. It's very important, you know. Okay, getting there now. Onto the bottom section. I feel like this fits the prompt really well as well, because the prompt is, for me, aside from the cave, I work from home. I always help out. So really, I mean, this is the thing. I can go days and days and days without actually leaving the confines of the land of the farm. So in a way, this kind of is my world for most of the time. And I feel very privileged to have such an area to traverse, even though I'm still technically at home. I am a complete homebody, so it's not surprising really. Right, I have to draw in my tree house here, and again, I think I'm going to have to use the 003 because it's pretty weeny. Okay, oh, that didn't go so well. I've had a little balcony there. Oh, I've made it wonky. Not too bothered about details here because we're right at the edge of the map now. I'm just getting in some of the details around my pond. This is more like a hedge than shrubs. And all that leaves for the main buildings now is to put in the house. Here we have the veggie patch. All the rows of things planted here. Okay. This is getting quite complicated, so I'm just going to erase the rest of my pencil lines now and then go round and add in a wee bit of detail because that's where the fun is. In terms of adding in detail, I'm going to be quite selective here. I've got this dark grey brush marker which I am going to use for my mountainous area up here. And then with the other really light grey, which is the 01, then I can just start using this to my advantage here. See, there we go, nice little details. And again, thinking about where that sun is, I can actually almost use this like I would a graphite pencil. For those of you that have watched challenges that I've done before, if there's a pencil included, quite often I use it just as an extra item for shading. And I'm kind of getting that kind of vibe from this light grey pen, which I'm actually very happy about, to be honest. Makes me super happy. Get a bit of contrast in our trees and a bit of texture also. I kind of want Big Bertha to stand out, so I'm not going to put in too much detail there just yet. I'm quite happy with this top section now. This little corner anyway. Now with the tyre stack here, I'm going to use the grey and the black as well. If we move over to this other side now, I can do the same thing again, just as I've done here. If I had a little bit more time, I would probably start putting in some cast shadows as well, just because I've got the sun in, but I really don't have time for that today. Okay, let's start to work on these buildings now. So the straw shed, I feel like, is going to have a fairly uniform roof here, so I'm just going to go for it. Maybe try and keep some texture in there. I don't think I've ever spent so much time on teeny tiny details on something like this before. I actually quite like that as boarding. You can see why I love the 003 fineliners. Like I'm right into them. Okay, for the cow sheds, this is going to have to be a very pale grey cow. Because if I make her black, you're not going to be able to see what she looks like. Yeah, so I've got the 01 here, so I'll make her splotchy like she looks like a dairy cow. There we go. And with the 005, I'm just going to hatch this area in here. So far, so good with the buildings. The medicine room is just going to be like a wooden shed type thing. So we'll make that look a bit more woodeny. I think I want to fill this doorway in as well because it looks pretty stark there on its own. I'm trying to think of like all the roof types. Maybe I want to give this like shingles almost. An implement shed would never have a shingled roof, but this one might. Just want to give this a bit of character. I'm not actually trying to do anything other than suggest that there might be some bricks here. And again, I think I'll use a lighter one. And maybe we can give this a bit of hatching just to give it a bit more character. Now the old byre, as I say, usually very rickety. We'll make this look like an old cobbled surface. So I'll pop some windows in here first. The other thing as well is about these old byres is they're usually fairly dark. Not a lot of light gets into them. And most of them have a very unique but funny smell, and that's every old byre I've ever been into smells the same way. I don't really know, I kind of just want to, you know, like Pigpen. And maybe with the grey, so yeah, there's the darker grey, so maybe we'll have that in there. This is a really good combination of pens. I'm really happy with this, like I really am. Okay, midden looks good. Never thought I'd say that sentence out loud. Let's shift over here now to this little group of buildings and the grain shed. Oh my. Now, grain sheds typically need a bit of ventilation, and the old style ones have these little tiny windows high up like this, so you can pile the grain up from the floor, you know, as high as you possibly can. And that still gives you ventilation. Modern grain sheds, these are usually replaced by just grated holes that have got fans in them. So you have one at each end so that the airflow's running through the shed. And the fans go both ways so that if the wind's going in either direction, you're still getting that airflow without it actually ruffling the grain and, you know, blowing it about a bit. I don't know if I want to go all out brick here as well, because I think that'll kind of distract from the windows, you know. And maybe again we could use the really light grey. I really like the brush pen in the dark grey, but it is very, very dark. And I'm quite sort of cautious about using it. Yeah, let's just put a bit of texture in here. I say the bothy is of questionable construction. Ours has got a corrugated tin roof on it, so if you happen to be inside it and it starts to rain, you get this whole little symphony of raindrops. It's like someone playing really bad percussion, but there's something very charming about that in a weird kind of way. Can you tell that I secretly love this old knackered shed? I don't think the windows, it's got these proper old like cross frame windows as well, and I think if you try to open one of them it would probably fall down, like the whole building. I mean, I think all the dust and the grime from many, many years is what's holding it together, if I'm truthful. Oh, that's so delicate. Let's just emphasise the grime. If it wasn't so rotten and knackered, I'm talking about our own, I would probably actually like wash it down and paint it, but again, I think if I wash it down it might fall down. So I'm just going to leave it where it is. I'm just going to leave it where it is. It's quite happy and it still serves a purpose, so why not? Okay, farmhouse. And again, I'm going to use that 003 to put in some windows. Again, farmhouses tend to have tall ceilings, you know, really utilise it, especially in the summer months, because that would save you having to try and light the place artificially. Obviously, initially would be with candles, and then when electricity came in, then you would want it to be minimal use. I think I might leave this as it is. I don't think I want to add any more because that's quite busy. I'm just adding a little bit of contrast here to the veggie patch, just so it stands out a bit from the road. So with this lightest grey now, I'm just going to start bringing this water down a bit. A little wonky picnic bench. So a bit like we did with Big Bertha, I want to add a little bit more detail to these two trees here, because obviously they are a feature, but I don't want to go crazy, because you can end up with things looking too busy. And this map, as is tends to be my drawing style, is quite clean. This is pretty busy for me though, to be fair, but the way I've actually gone about it is, that's the wrong pen. Too busy talking, Jem. The way I've gone about it is pretty much the way I would do things. I think this is probably the closest thing I've got to a style, actually, is the fact that, you know, I go for this sort of clean, uncluttered approach. Although there is plenty of detail, I've set it out in such a way that there's lots of nice white spaces in between, and that's something that I just like. I like that in everyday life as well. I like everything to be orderly, everything has to have a place, and I like clear surfaces. I don't like a lot of stuff on display because I just feel like it's an assault on my senses, and it makes me feel very chaotic and not in control and not very calm. So that must sort of transfer into, you know, the way my brain processes ideas and actually spits it back out on paper. And that's probably quite an interesting psychological assessment of myself. Oh, geez, we're getting a bit too deep. This video has been going on too long, clearly, when I start talking about stuff like that. But we're nearly there, guys. Hang in there. We're nearly done. I was going to start adding a bit of texture in the grass areas and everything, but honestly, I think there's enough going on here that I'm quite happy just to leave it as it is. My hand's also starting to cramp up as well. It's been a long time since I've used pens for this long. The pond. Forgot to label that earlier. All right, guys. Wow, deep breath. I think I am done. Well, if there was ever a map, this is it. Absolutely fabulous. I have had the best fun, and I was really excited about this, even though it's not necessarily an exciting box in terms of supplies. I think that Upcrate have outdone themselves with this, and it was a really good concept, a really good idea. I'm really sorry I didn't use the ruler. I'm just not a ruler person at all. That's not something that appeals to me. This eraser's been great as well. I've really enjoyed using that. So nice to have really reliable supplies, and I've just let my imagination go bananas today, which is really refreshing as well. So I hope that you've enjoyed this. Maybe you've learned something about farms today as well, just as an aside. I would love to hear your thoughts on this and how you got on with your Upcrate battle as well for the prompt worldwide map. This is definitely my world, and if I could have it as my world, I certainly would. So I want to thank you very much for watching. Thanks for coming and hanging out, guys. There will be a video not on Sunday but next Thursday. I'm going to give my elbow a wee rest for a couple of days because we've done live streams and we've had 2 videos on the bounce now, so I'm just going to keep looking after this old thing here because I kind of need it. So I'll see you back in the cave next Thursday for another video. Have a great day, everyone, and bye bye for now.